What would it be today?
$21,612.00.
Ho, baby! So we did a video a while back called Why No One Buys Garden Tractors Anymore. One of the top comments we got was new garden tractors are just too expensive. Let's find out in today's video if that's true.
That video got around 100,000 views and almost 500 comments. And many of those comments were something along the lines of garden tractors became too expensive or they weren't affordable. However, if you go back, way back to, when these
You gotta
were
do it
made.
right, son. Way back.
So if you go back, way back to the 1960s, 70s, 80s, when all of these tractors were being made new, and you look at the prices of them and then put them into an inflation calculator, you will see that they were similarly expensive as the way the tractors are now. And now keep in mind, these were all two-wheel drive. Most of them were either one or two-cylinder air-cooled engines. They weren't power steering, four-wheel drive, diesel.
Yeah, that's true. So when you keep this in mind, like we said, we're not talking new subcompacts with power steering and four-wheel drive and diesel and all these good amenities and features that you have come to know and love with modern tractors. These are pretty basic compared to what a modern tractor is going to be. But as you're going to see, they still would be quite expensive. So let's start off with everyone's favorite, John Deere. We did a video on the John Deere 318 when we compared it to the 140 H3 and the 420. If you want to see that, where should they click?
Up here, maybe up here. They should click up.
But the John Deere 318 way back in 1983 would have been about $5,099. What's it come out to if we punch it into the 2024 inflation calculator?
That would be roughly $16,380.
So in keeping with the John Deere theme, let's do one of their bigger tractors. It is a diesel engine. I believe it's the only one in this list that does have a diesel engine. And that's going to be the John Deere 430. What was the original price back in 92?
That would have been $9,500.
Wow. What would it be today?
$21,612.00.
Ho, baby! $21,600. Think about that for a second. So when people tell you that tractors now are too expensive, how many garden tractors do you see out there that are $21,600? I don't know of any.
No, you see cars that are that price. You don't see individual garden tractors.
Maybe it's just John Deere because that's the most popular and well-known brand and it's expensive. Let's move on to some other brands.
So how about we talk about another really popular garden tractor, the Bohlins 1050. So the original price for that in 1965 would have been $888. And I'm assuming
$888?
$888, and I'm assuming 88 cents just to round it out.
And that's in 65, so it sounds cheap today, but what would it punch into in the calculator?
$8,941.
Wow, so just under $9,000. This is a pretty basic garden tractor, if I'm going to be honest. Nothing against Bohlins, but this isn't, special as far as features or size or anything. It's your standard run-of-the-mill garden tractor, and it still would be $9,000 here in 2024. Let's move on to some other models. How about one of the most Americana brands out there, Cub Cadet? Let's talk about the Cub Cadet 102. Back in 1967, it would have been $1,040, which is
$9,931.
So just under $10,000.
I think after tax, it would be probably right about $10,000.
Now keep in mind, these prices, I'm pretty sure, would have been with maybe a mower deck. This wasn't like the tractor with 15 attachments for your year-round chores. This is the tractor and maybe up to one implement, which is what these prices are going to represent. Let's talk about Wheelhorse. We do have a video about Wheelhorse's history, about the cool father-son history of the brand. And if you want to see that, click up here. But let's move on to the Wheelhorse 653, Brett.
So the original price in 1963, which actually seemed pretty cheap until you looked further into it, would have been $554.
Not bad.
Which would have been an inflation price of $5,725, which doesn't seem bad until you consider this was a 6 horsepower, single cylinder, two-wheel drive gas garden tractor.
Pretty small compared to a lot of the other tractors on our list.
So for a small, small garden tractor, it would have been nearly $6,000.
Wow. So let's move on to a little more of an expensive wheel horse, and that would be the wheel horse 420 LSE. So in 1986, and I believe the reason this is so expensive was because it was like a 40th anniversary model. But
Yeah, I believe LSE stands for Limited Special Edition.
But back in 86, it would have been $7,950, which today would be
$22,789.
almost 23 grand for a two-wheel drive gasoline garden tractor. Damn. So let's move on to my beloved Sears SS14. Feature that in a number of different videos. It was a one-year-only tractor in 1971, and at that time it would have cost about $985, which today would be
$7,775.44.
Now you know why we say it's the best bargain tractor out there. Start comparing that to some of your $21,000 or $22,000 tractors here in 2024, and $7,700 seems like a real bargain.
Yeah, it does. And actually, if you want to see a video about that, actually, I've made more than a few, actually, about the Sears SS14.
In fact, if they want to see the budget garden tractor video we just referenced.
Actually, yeah, if they want to see that exact video, they can click up here and watch it.
All right, son. So for kicks and giggles, let's compare tractors to vehicles of the same vintage and see how they compare price-wise. So according to the internet anyways, back in 1963, you could get a Dodge Dart for $1,697, just under $1,700. Or you get a full-size Dodge for about $1,897 or $1,900. Now, if we compare that to the same year, 1963 wheel horse 653, which was $554, it's about 3 times cheaper than the car would have been.
So if we move ahead in time a few years to 1965, a brand new Volkswagen Beetle would have been $1,595 new. While the same year's Bolin's 1050 would have been $888. So the price differential would have been, the Bolin's was about half the price, maybe a little over half the price of the same year's Beetle. However, it should also be noted that the Beetle was a very cheap car. It was actually, I believe, the cheapest car in America at the time, if not one of.
And it was an import. So let's look at a domestic car. How about the 1967 Ford sedan? I believe they're talking about the Ford Galaxy. And that would have been brand new in 1967, $2,199, while the same year, Cub Cadet 102 was $1,040. So again, we're talking about half the price for the garden tractor versus a new car of that era. A 1983 Chevy Chevette, how much would that have cost?
That would have been right about $7,287.
Oh, so the prices went up quite a bit, but we're talking about a nicer car. So let's talk about a nicer garden tractor, and that would have been the 83 John Deere 318, which was $5,099. So now we're talking about 1.5 times the price. So it went from 3 times the price to twice the price to 1.5 times the price in 83. Let's move on and talk a little bit about pickups.
So I know that nowadays everyone has a notion that pickup trucks are these big fancy vehicles. And to those uninformed, I feel it should be noted that this isn't what we're talking about. You know, back in the day, pickup trucks were rugged workhorses, you know.
Yeah, plain Janes.
Yes, they were the cheap vehicles, so to speak. You know, they didn't have leather seats. They didn't have, you know, quilted, heated, massaging, cooled, you know. It was, you had a seat, you had a steering wheel, you had some sort of transmission, you had an engine.
Crank windows, and they were much smaller
Yes.
than your modern day trucks are going to be. But a 1986 Dodge D50 would have been about $5,595, whereas an 86 wheel horse 420 LSE was $7,950. So now the garden tractor is 1.5 times the price of a brand new truck from the exact same year. So you can see things really have turned. So how about a more luxury car versus a more luxury garden tractor, Brett?
So if we want to go through a luxury car, we can go with the Oldsmobile Supreme, which would have been a 92 Oldsmobile Supreme is what we got for this one, which would have had a price of $15,895. You compare that to a 1992 John Deere 420, which I feel would have been the luxury garden tractor of the time. It would have been about $9,500. So again, we can see that the luxury car was more expensive, but it wasn't like 4 or 5 times the price. It was only 1.5 times more expensive.
Yeah, so you could say that the 420 wheel horse was an outlier, but you can see that the majority of the time, the garden tractor is only about, 50% cheaper than the car. Oftentimes, it's within 75% of the price of the car. So now, if you look at the average car price here in 2024 across the board, we're talking about $47,000.
Yeah, so I'm sure that there'll be comments saying, "Oh, you can buy a brand new Nissan Versa for 17 grand,"
You
or
can also buy a $100,000 car. So average
Yes.
means average of everything, highs and the lows.
Lows, yes.
So $47,000 would be an average new car price here in 2024. So like we said earlier, let's say we figure somewhere between 1.5 to 2 times the price of a garden tractor. That means a garden tractor with the inflation punched in, today's pricing would be somewhere around $23,500 to $31,300. So 23 to 31 grand is
Would
what a
be
garden
it.
tractor should cost if it was the same ratio that garden tractors used to be to vehicles back in the day.
yes.
So I think the problem, truthfully, is people still expect a quality-made American garden tractor with all these rugged features, but they still expect to pay prices they would have done back in the 1980s.
Yeah, so a lot of people are thinking, "Oh, I paid 5 to 10 grand for my brand new John Deere 318 in 1983, so why don't I pay 5 to 10 grand for a brand new John Deere in 2024?"
Yeah, I think that is the problem, honestly. People are still expecting that, and it's just not a reality.
No.
You also got to factor in the average income in 1985 was about $11,000 to $12,000 per year for your average single person. Here in 2024, it's about $63,000. Again, this is across the country. This isn't particular states. We happen to live in Massachusetts, and he lives in Connecticut, which are two of the highest states as far as what it costs and what you can make. But across the average of the nation, people make 63 grand a year, whereas in 1985 they made about 11 to 12 grand. So you're talking about 5 times more. So it stands to reason a garden tractor should cost 5 times as much, which would make sense. Instead of 5 or 6 grand, you're talking 25 or 30 grand.
And that again checks that it'd be, between 1.5 times the price and 2 times the price
So
between a garden
Yeah.
tractor to a new car. That you'd pay 25 to 30 for a garden tractor. You're paying 47 on average for a new car. That makes sense.
yeah, I mean, if you really look at the numbers and start punching them in and do calculations and ratios, in inflation calculators, you really see that. I honestly think the problem is no one wants to pay for quality machines anymore, and they're willing to accept cheaper, lower price point machines, even if it means they're going to have to replace it in 2 or 3 years instead of having it be passed down generationally. Let us know in the comments if you agree, if you think we're crazy, if you think our numbers are all mixed up. And also let us know if you're an older person watching where our price is accurate. Did cars cost back in the day what we said they would, according to our research? We hope you enjoyed today's video. We hope you're enjoying the whole Tractor Talk series.
We'll see you guys in the next one.